This is the perfect time of my day to go inside and see to what degree I was able to maintain my spirituality while going through the activities of the day. And what I see happening so frequently is a pull into physicality, the pull of the senses, the pull of the activities, the pull of time, the pull of relationships. It's not just a matter of losing spirituality while going through the day, but it's actually the experience of losing myself as I go through the day. The essence of spirituality is that I am a spiritual being expressing through the physical organs. I use this time to center myself, reconnect with that very deep sense of self. I am the point of life inside this body, able to observe the body, able to observe the outer world, even able to observe the activity in my own inner world of thoughts and feelings. Observing from a still point, a peaceful space that is me. Within myself, I, the living being, are all the qualities that make life worthwhile, that make life of quality: peace, love, truth, harmony, purity. To not lose myself means I don't lose access to these qualities within the self. That is how I can have quality of life. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Good evening and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is making spirituality relevant in one's life. So sometimes you wonder, how is this even like an important topic? Is this something meaningful? And I often hear you mention when you're at these retreats, maybe not necessarily just retreats, but that's usually where I hear this context, is when they mention, wow, this is very powerful, but now I have to go back to the real world. So how am I supposed to do that? So it seems like, we are pulled for something deeper. But if we have that kind of quandary, what's going on, without really just, that, of course, what we really want inside, but what is really going on when we are having that experience?
Perhaps it just points to this idea that somewhere along the way, spirituality and day-to-day life got separated, which is why we often go, I suppose, to a residential retreat. But the intention of going to a retreat wasn't to reinforce that separation, but because the imbalance is so great between doing and being, we've got the doing covered. When there's an imbalance like that, we kind of need to focus exclusively on the weaker aspect with the vision of integrating it back. So balance means this and that, not this or that. So the idea of going to a mountaintop or anything wasn't, again, to reinforce the separation, but to bring ourselves into a bit more balance, if you will, to address the weakness and then integrate it back. So the retreat doesn't end when I leave the mountain. It's just the beginning. Everything that I've managed to experience, I want to bring into day-to-day life. And this happens even during the day. Very many of us have early morning meditation or meditation at the beginning of our day. We have very nice experience. It's very quiet. But the intention of that isn't just to be undistracted in focusing on spirituality, but to so deeply imprint spirituality upon myself that it will naturally continue. I can take it into the day with myself, just as when we have any experience that really imprints on us as we're going through the day, we just can't forget about it. It's still controlling us. We want spirituality to imprint that deeply on ourselves that it naturally is carried through the day.
So what I really enjoy about these interviews is learning to hear about personal experiences. What has that been like for you in terms of, you recognize of something that was very relevant for yourself when you heard that you were a soul, which for some kind of falls in dead water, right? And it's not that they don't eventually, it's just everyone's timing and what's going on, but something really sparked within you. What has that journey been like for you in terms of its relevancy? Has that kind of gone up and down? What kind of challenges have you felt in terms of this is it, this is relevant, and what that kind of looks like in the, the playing field of life?
I've recently had a couple of experiences. This is just as an example, a couple of experiences. And the reason is because the formula applies to spirituality of souls approaching me. This is in the fitness setting. One was a physio referring a client to me, which is very odd because I'm not in any way physiotherapist or trained or knowledgeable or anything. So I found it very strange. The other one was actually a soul who hunted me down. And what they both shared is that one, it was extreme pain. They've had surgery, so there was extreme pain. And the other one was just noticing there was starting to be restriction and concern about the longevity of their movement, healthy movement, physical movement. So they both were approaching me to explore a very different aspect of physical activity because they felt it was extremely relevant to addressing either the pain or the restrictiveness that they're starting to notice in the body. Very, very relevant. And that was just the feeling when I came the first time to a Brahma Kumari center. I had been searching for something that was about, many people at some point experiencing pain or sorrow in their life of the heart, at a spiritual level, pain or sorrow, either acute or just chronic, it's always there. And looking for something that pain or sorrow motivates them. I have to change something, in my life. Now, many just think it's something outside that needs to be changed, but those who come to a spiritual practice have gotten to the point where they realize something in me has to change. And when I came to the Brahma Kumaris, I not only knew what that thing was, but, to realize that solution and the relevance of it. This is the secret to a healthy and happy life. The thing that's missing is personal dignity. Now, to say that, which is what spirituality represents, that's all it's about, is restoring the spiritual dignity of the soul. To say that's not relevant to day-to-day life makes no sense to me. I'm not sure what we're doing without that personal dignity. This is why we experience so much pain. So that whether you call it personal dignity or what I experience, self-respect, being told that I am a soul, I'm of deep value, and it's not in any way, that value is not connected in any way to anything temporary or physical or external. That was like liberation and solution, all wrapped in one. To live, that you have two choices, either to live with self-respect and personal dignity or to not. And personal dignity, self-respect isn't a physical commodity. It's something non-physical, which is the realm of spirituality. So that's what I really felt when I came and realized it was the thing I was looking for. The pain was inspiring me to seek it out, and immediately recognized this is the medicine.
It's interesting because when I remember, learning about being a soul, it just struck me so deep inside. I don't have to define myself by temporary things. But then the journey in terms of a lot of resistance that happened was quite interesting, that I couldn't even feel the relationship between being a soul and self-respect. I couldn't feel that, even though there was some value in there. And so I just remember when probably one of the earlier courses that you were facilitating, in terms of, we call it the bank shot, that soul consciousness, and remembering, having a connection to our spiritual parent, the Supreme Soul, is an indirect way. But have you felt that it is increasingly feeling more like it's direct in terms of its relevancy? And what do you feel is needed for that to happen?
I think fairly early, it felt like it's direct, and we were calling it indirect with relation to how we were going about life before. So whether from a physical perspective, yes, it probably seems very indirect, but it's actually extremely direct. We're really going right for the seed of the problem, if you will, what needs to be addressed. And, every single day, for the many years of studying, every day I am reminded that focus on, whatever issue is coming up. And I suppose that's why we call it indirect, because we have worldly ideas of how to address issues that come up. But spirituality is saying whatever issues come up, you have to be centered to address it. Now, in physicality, this makes total sense when it comes to physical movement. It makes total sense. I'm not sure. Well, I know why. I mean, obviously, the resistance is going to try to, the inner resistance is going to try to numb that or convince otherwise. But if I'm not there, if I'm not present, this already is a big problem. So to simply center the self and respond to situations, to decision make from that very centered place, it just seems common sense to me, very direct.
It's interesting because I know we've spoken about this before, but the journey of, you learn, you just hear that you're a soul. And then the journey of actually experiencing that is quite an interesting experience. And I remember at one point in time, you had mentioned that you were invited to the Peace Mental Awards. This is at the YMCA, and you were giving a speech about, peace is actually a personality. And I even remember at that time was like, I don't even understand what you mean by that. And I realized in a sense it's as if being spiritually numb, in a sense. Like when you tell souls, maybe some got it, but maybe some didn't. Like I didn't get it in the sense that didn't even realize that for so long that peace is a reaction. And even when you said that, I didn't even understand what you meant, but we're so numb that, you know, we're actually seeking these qualities of love and peace, happiness, contentment out there. And yet we don't know that that's actually not the way we used to operate. That's not who we are. And to tell someone that, it's like kind of like waiting for something to click inside. And it's a timing thing, but it's like this huge realization as if they're walking and moving around completely enslaved to everything around us as a sense of value. But to feel that your soul and the value of it is quite a journey. And what has been, what kind of resistance that we need to override? What has that been like for you? You know, to recognize that in the beginning and to actually experience it. Because I remember you would often say that silence, which is like oxygen, is like chocolate. And I remember early on, I was like, that's not what my experience is. But I think there was just a lot of resistance to overcome, to come to a point where I hear, you know, consider yourself to be a soul, you know, and remember who you belong to now feels like, oh, it feels so good just to be able to hear that and actually access what that means.
First off, with respect to where you started, you know, that we might think these qualities, peace, love, happiness, are reactions. It's quite interesting because we feel that way about ourselves, but our expectations of other people is that they are supposed to be loving under all circumstances. They're supposed to be peaceful and, you know, honest under all. So we kind of expect people to operate like that's their personality, but somehow we accept ourselves from that. So we're kind of crazy, quite frankly. But that aside, I think it's really, and I often would be called the voice of doom and gloom, but I think it's, and I do this in training, I have to say, okay, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to, this is going to feel very awkward to you. You may not enjoy it that much. There might be resistance to it. It's going to take time. It's nice to have all of that going in. We often say this is the way a good medical person will operate when they're advising someone. I was talking to someone and they had to take their dog in for some sort of medical procedure or treatment, a vaccination. And the next day, the dog seemed to be lethargic and a little bit maybe feverish. And the first thing I said, did the vet, did they explain what might happen afterwards? And she says, no, actually they didn't, and I forgot to ask. And that's pretty important information, you know. So you know, a good medical provider, when you're embarking on a change operation, whatever, they kind of let you know what to expect. So the physiotherapist I often work with will really make this clear. They'll draw charts. So basically, like, this is after 10 days, you're going to think that you can jump over the moon. You can't. After 15 days, suddenly things are going to start to feel all wonky. That's normal. So it's so helpful to know that, so that I'm not confused or jump ship or give up or think I'm a dud or this isn't working. It's really, you know, and so that's very important to know the lay of the land. But also in this study, there's a formula that those who, we call them wise souls, I suppose, but those who are the most disinterested, feeling the most drained, the most knocked around, they're the ones who are going to do the best at this, actually, because they're so motivated. So I constantly, daily have to revise that motivation. so that I've got that override available. Why am I doing this? And that was one of the things I shared. I would interview long distance runners, marathon runners, over halfway your body is done and you just want to lie down. They keep going. Why? How are they able to override? Their will is able to override the inertia of the body. How, the body's eating up its own stores, which is a sign that it really would like to stop. How do they override that? What's the understanding inside? So I need to also be aware of what to expect. So the marathon runner is told, at this point, you're going to hit a wall at this point. So they're aware, but also they need to have very, very good reason they're doing this, high motivation that they constantly are revising.
Side note, I've never actually asked you, were you interviewing these runners when you were actually on the spiritual journey?
Yeah, yes, it was after I started very early in the study.
So how did you find it helped you when you got to hear about just their experiences?
I think there was a piece of me that was, because it's odd to ask about at the beginning. I think there was I was one of the souls that actually knew about the resistance even before I walked through the door of a Raj Yoga. It was actually stopping me from even walking through the door. There was already a battle unleashed of, I really want to do this, but a piece of me also saying, don't do this. And so that battle was unleashed. The resistance became very clear to me very early on. So I think I was pulled to talk to the runners, just to get a sense of how do they address, what's the psychology behind the resistance.
I do find that's meaningful because one of the things that we often share about is you need to revisit again and again, why am I doing what I'm doing? So I found that just creative, that you would go and ask such a question in terms of how it integrates in terms of the significance for yourself. But while you were sharing, I was thinking about, the topic of this is about making spirituality relevant in your own life. And I believe you had mentioned during the commentary, this is more than just something that I'm just using to cope with. Like I am a soul, and to be able to feel that. So I was thinking about the importance of realizing. And what would you, just for someone who's actually just watching right now, these sessions, what is realizing? Because that's very different from thinking.
Realizing is to see. And sometimes we say to understand, that it becomes real to me. So someone could tell me something and it sounds sensible and reasonable theoretically, but I haven't actually, in fitness, we call it felt it in my own body. So, which is super critical in fitness. I can be lying in bed and imagine myself doing more than one pull-up. But it's not till I actually jump up on the bar and try to do it and feel it that I can completely understand what's going on and that it's not going to happen. So I want to feel it in my own being, to see it. So, as you're listening now, you can perhaps experience that gap between thinking or saying. You could just say out loud now, I am a soul. Very easy. I'm a soul. And it feels right. It seems like, yes, I believe that's true, but I'm not feeling it. The other day, I think it was yesterday, I had to get something in the mouth. And so they give you that thing to freeze your mouth, some dental work. And apparently nothing's going to stop this body from eating. Because they said, yeah, you won't be able to eat. You'll bite yourself. You won't feel anything. I had nope. Anyways, I digress. But this idea that it's numb. So, when they do this to the mouth, I know there's teeth there. I know they can chew. I'm just not feeling anything. But I know it's true. So I can say I'm a soul. I can even think I'm a soul, but I'm not feeling it in my being. All the aspects of being a soul, which is the detachment, is the reframing, is the neutrality, is the observing, is the loving feelings. All of that isn't happening. All of the aspects that actually will be there naturally if I am truly in that state. I need to be aware of that gap. So my entire journey is closing that gap, that I realize is that it's real. I experience it. And when it comes to the resistance, it's been said, one of the earlier students, the original students, Daddy Janki used to say, without realization, there will not be transformation. And that's a really important aspect because it could look like I'm changing. At some surface level, it could look like I'm changing. I've started wearing different clothes. I've started speaking less softly, whatever. I've started changing my schedule. These are all very good things. Maybe giving lectures, whatever the case. But the transformation we're talking about can only be known when I'm put in a challenging situation. That's when I'll know if I've changed. That transformation is only possible if I've had realization, I've experienced this information, not just thought about it, talked about it, looked at it, analyzed it, but I've actually felt it in my being, and all the attributes and benefits of it are experienced. So that's what we want to happen.
That key piece when you're talking about fitness, I felt it in my body. Just when you were saying I felt in my body when it comes to fitness, but when you said I felt it in my being in terms of I've realized that I'm experiencing it again and again and again. And I was thinking when you're talking about the pull-up, I guess when you're dreaming, you don't experience that resistance. Maybe you do, but until you're actually physically doing it, can you actually feel the resistance? But you must be enacting power. So to be able to enact the experience that actually does a lot of override we may not even realize when it comes to that. It's such a powerful topic. We may just have to have another topic about realization, because I do feel that souls are really grappling with that. What's the difference from thinking, talking about it, listening, reading about it, and realizing, like, can I actually discern what that feels like when I've realized again and again and again, and it's not the same thing as imagination and thinking. And so, but we have come to the end of the session, so we should have a little reflection. Om Shanti.
There is this phrase that we use in this spiritual study. That phrase is Om Shanti. Om, I am a soul. Shanti, the embodiment of peace. I am a peaceful soul. The entire journey is to become that phrase, Om Shanti. I can say it, I can think it, but do I experience it, that stage, consistently, constantly, unconditionally? It requires that I be in the state, the awareness of soul, an eternal being. I am separate from the body, a traveler through time, nothing temporal, can never belong to me, not people, not things, not status. I am completely free, and I never die. so detached from the attributes of the body, the gender, the age, the culture, the language, even the past. Completely free, light, absolutely calm, peaceful. Arriving at the stage of Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and thank you for joining with us this evening. We always encourage souls, if they actually live in Calgary, to come and experiment. So we do have the Inner Peace Center that is in the West Winds area of Calgary. We also have an on-site session that's at the Academy. Those are on Saturdays as well to experiment. Of course, we have a lot of online sessions as well. And that's the most important thing, is to be able to discern, am I experimenting, am I experiencing, so I can realize. And so we do have some sessions as well in terms of on-site. We usually have it on the first Saturday of the month at the Inner Peace Center, but I believe there's a little bit of an exception. The next workshop in English at the Inner Peace Center is actually the first Sunday of the month, and it's 12 o'clock to 3:30. Feel free to visit the website or Eventbrite to register for that. We also have the Hindi Raja Yoga full course that will be happening in May. Again, that's on the website. Lots of different sessions, drop-in sessions, as I mentioned about. So feel free to also email the center if you have questions. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Jeannie, for your sharing from the heart. Om Shanti.